Monero, I don't want no cash. I want Monero, I don't want no dash. I don't want no Bitcoin, cause when they track it, it feels like trash.
In today's episode, I have a conversation with Douglas TUMAN. Douglas is the creator and host of Monero Talk and Monerotopia. He is spearheading the Monero Nodo project, XMR Chat, XMR Bazaar, Copa Monero, and so much more. In the conversation, we talk about entrepreneurship in the crypto realm, the experiences Doug has collected over the years, thoughts about onboarding newbies, and developing with XMR. I hope you have fun listening to this conversation. If you want to learn more about Douglas or anything discussed here in the show, just check the links in the show notes and enjoy the show. So, welcome, Douglas.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me. Good morning. Good afternoon, I guess, where you are, evening.
Yes, for me, it's the early afternoon. I'm super excited to talk to you. Over the last few episodes of my podcast, I've had conversations with crypto anarchists and cypherpunks such as Rachel Rose O'Leary and Juraj Betner. These were more technical conversations, and I think today we will focus more on the entrepreneurial aspect of the cypherpunk revolution, and I'm very excited to pick your brain on this. But to first start off, I'm very interested. How did you come to be such a staunch Monero advocate? Did you get into crypto anarchy first, or was crypto the first step for you?
I mean, I guess anybody who's in this movement had some form of liberty running through their veins, right? To some degree, right? So I've always been a libertarian at heart. Perhaps not by name, I wasn't always political. But as a young man, I remember even my friends labeling me as a libertarian. They'd be like, you know what, you're a libertarian, So I've always had these libertarian ideals, big advocate of liberty, a big patriot actually over here in the U.S., but a believer that actually the ideals of America actually align quite well with libertarian ideology. And when I discovered crypto, I don't need to get into that's a whole big story. It was actually Dogecoin was the first thing I discovered in 2013. But when I discovered crypto and when I really started to understand it, when I ultimately discovered Bitcoin and read the white paper, what got me most excited about it was we have this thing that's self-propelling that no government or corporation can control. It was that aspect that really was the eureka moment, right? I remember thinking that that there's no way this thing is what they actually say it is. It's just another attempt at digital cash. It's obviously there's some centralized element to it. But when I finally had that eureka moment and understood, oh no, this thing is actually decentralized and can't be controlled. That's when I got really excited about the technology for all those liberty reasons. I was like, wow, here we go. The government can't shut this down. So I'd say going into crypto, I was already looking for tools, things like that, things that could be very disruptive to the status quo that governments or corporations can't control. And when I found crypto, it certainly fit that niche. And ultimately, that's what led me to Monero, right? So I was always in the kind of going down that path. I thought Bitcoin was going to do it. I wasn't super technical, so it took me some time to understand, wait a minute, actually, no, Bitcoin is completely traceable. Not that much time, though, because it became pretty obvious when I started to actually use the currency rather than just trying to buy some and hold it. But when I started sending it to friends and things like that, and I'd go check the block explorer, and I'd be like, wait a minute, if I could look this up, so can the guy that I just sent it to. And when I started to have those realizations, I started to look for something like Monero. Obviously, I stumbled upon Monero. That was the one of a few at the time that were trying to solve that problem of lacking privacy and fungibility. And yeah, that's ultimately how I found my way to Monero. Like they say, all roads lead to Monero, right? So really a pursuit of finding the crypto that was most disruptive to the status quo, something that can't be controlled or co-opted.
Yeah, awesome. I think for me, it's a very similar story. I want to double click a little bit on the libertarian origins. Did you do any philosophical reading? Like, did you read Rothbard, Mises, or, yeah, what?
Those things came later in my journey. You know, once I got into crypto, I started as I became more libertarian. I started discovering, you know, those authors, right? And you know, I heard names, right? But that's when I started to like sit down and read. I mean, my reading before that was, you know, just more deeply philosophical, right? Like reading like Plato and Aristotle and Nietzsche. I hadn't found my way to the Austrian authors and actually sat down and read them. When I went to law school, I feel like you know, in just reading the Constitution and reading the Federalist Papers and, you know, historical papers that became basically the arguments that were taking place at the founding of the country. I think a lot of my base philosophies came from that, from understanding those arguments and seeing where I stood on those arguments. But actually sitting down and reading Mises and those guys didn't happen until I had already gotten into crypto.
Yeah.
And obviously, once I started to go down that rabbit hole, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
This is the way they figured it out. They've already analyzed all this and gotten to the root of it.
Yeah. It's like you have this intrinsic kind of perspective on the world that people are sovereign, they have their property rights, and like they shouldn't interfere in your affairs, and vice versa. And then when you come to read Rothbard, it's like he puts it so eloquently, and he really like distills the essence of some arguments and puts it very plainly. And for me, it was exactly the same experience, that I had these leanings beforehand, but I couldn't verbalize them so well. And when I read them, I was like, yes, they are on the right path. So, and this also kind of, I guess, harps back to the point you made earlier, that you were patriotic or are patriotic. And in the founding stages of America, the origin story is we are not bending the knee to our British overlords, but we are a sovereign people, and we will federate amongst ourselves to kind of formulate a government. And yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the Bill of Rights, all those things, all those important things. I mean, they came from these philosophies, right, of life, liberty, and property. Which it's really no more complicated than that. Obviously, the government has managed to make those complicated topics in their pursuit to confuse people. But at the end of the day, it's really quite simple. These natural rights that we have as humans.
Yeah, and I totally agree. The arguments haven't changed a whole lot. The arguments that were made 200 years ago are still valid today, because they are not hinging on what is contemporary in the modern day and age, but they are like foundational to the natures of us human beings, that we have these inalienable rights and that we are allowed to assert them. And it's not something that is like granted from on high, but it's like originates from within us, and we as individuals can assert it. And I also see Monero exactly like this. You know, you have your own computer, your own property, and you can run some code on this property, and by running that code, joining a voluntary network of other peers who coordinate, for example, to create this blockchain where we have transactions. Amazing. But I think your real specialty, at least as I've come to know you, is entrepreneurship. Like, you are the super charismatic, extroverted guy who created the Monero Talk podcast, and that's how you came first on my radar. And maybe can you speak a little bit on this? What motivated you to start a podcast and do it so diligently over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, once again, it all kind of derives from that same core philosophy, principles, and drive, right? So into these concepts, and like I said, the disruptive element was always a drive for me, and I had always wanted to create something that would help disrupt in a positive way. Oh, I've from a young age, I've been driven to do that. I've worked on various projects even before crypto started that were of disruptive nature. I worked on a project called Gov Together. This was, I guess, right around when Bitcoin was being had just launched. And actually, if I wasn't so into my project at the time, I probably would have absorbed Bitcoin, because it led me to circles where I started hearing the term like very early in like 2010 or whatever. And Gov Together was just to give you an example, Gov Together was a way to essentially disrupt the Democratic Republic here in the US. The idea was we would create software technology that will allow people to vote, citizens to vote on every single issue, but they would do it through their representative. So like you would get a congressperson to pledge to use this technology, which would basically just be a polling technology, but it would allow them to poll all their constituents so they can use that to help determine how they vote in Congress. So just kind of a way to add an additional layer of democracy to our democratic republic to make it more pure. Not a direct democracy, which I don't necessarily believe in, especially here in this country. I don't know if I trust the population to leave it to the majority to decide for everyone. But the idea was to give it this additional tool for representatives to use to help determine how they would vote in Congress. Just to give you an idea of like what my thinking was. And so I was always kind of working on little projects like that. And obviously when crypto came along, I was thinking about all the amazing things we can do with it. And first I sat on the sidelines and just learned. I thought I wasn't, a super coder. I didn't know cryptography. So I thought maybe, I didn't have the skill set to really get into it and start creating. But as I got more involved, I saw all the things that I wanted to exist. And so I started thinking about those things and maybe creating them. I started the Monero Talk channel mostly for pursuit of knowledge, right? I figured that would give me access to all these super geniuses who were building it, right? So rather than annoying them on the internet with random questions, if I start a podcast and I invite them to my show, maybe I could kind of slowly work my way up the ladder and just kind of learn out in the open. Just be very honest about the fact that I'm not nearly as technical as they are. Ask my stupid questions, and continue, pursue knowledge that way. So that's really where Monero Talk came from. It was my own pursuit. And it was also to just help Monero. I thought that was really one of the things that I can do at the time to try to help Monero. Go out there and learn about it publicly, interview people, and put the information out. So that was kind of my first dipping my toe in for the first time in terms of being entrepreneurial in the space. Actually, early on, I attempted a startup. We had called it Quick Monero, and that was a way to buy Monero with gift cards. So that was my first attempt to build something for the Monero ecosystem. This was early. This was like 2017, 2018. And we got to the point where we were printing out these scratch-off cards that would go into stores, and we had an MVP built, and you could actually go and redeem it. But I actually got scared off because I'm here in New York.
With the bit license.
The bit license had dropped. It's a gray area. Are you effectively, what are the rules there with selling gift cards? Even now, it's even probably more egregious right now. Back then, I probably could have gotten away with it, but I for whatever reason, I stepped back. Right, the chilling effect is real. Right, so I was chilled out of that one. I didn't pursue. And then, yeah, as you know, I got into a lot of other different projects which we could talk about. But yeah, it was always the drive to disrupt and come up with tools and things that I think, a large sector of people could use and it would be useful for purposes of, improving how they either obtain or use Monero.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it really shines through your work that it's super authentic. And I also listened before he took the Spotify deal. I love to listen to Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan also was this person who wasn't super versed like in any specific field, maybe except for martial arts and stand-up comedy, but he was curious and he wasn't afraid to look stupid and ask questions as he is trying to figure things out in his head. And I really appreciate this approach because, let's face it, most of the people you interview are like way above here, and the normies is like from a contextual understanding down here, and you kind of serve as that bridge to talk to an expert, try to put the concepts into simple words, and then like disseminate the information to everybody else who wants to listen to. And over the years, I mean, you've had them all on your show, all the legends of the Monero community. Just your, I think one of your most recent episodes with Ragnium, I thought was super interesting that you have this concept of he's like not even like leaking his voice information, but using a voice double and typing the answers. And yeah, I think this is exactly the right approach to say, I'm just curious and I want to learn more, and I'm kind of documenting my learning journey. And if you're up for it, you can tune in and learn with me. And I certainly have. And so thank you for all of the amazing episodes you've done with Monero Talk.
Yeah, man. It's like I said, it's out of love. When I do these shows, I'm living my dream when I do it, right? From day one. I mean, people, when I first started it too, people are like, "Oh, that's cool, but how are you going to do a show on Monero? Like, you're going to run out of things to talk about." That has not been the case at all. We had some doldrums in the beginning where things during maybe one of the earlier bear markets, things got a little slow, but really not for me, right? There was always something happening in Monero in terms of development and improvements. And now with the world the way it is, the direction that the wider world is moving in, the topics are endless, right? Because Monero is now more, in my mind, more pertinent and important than ever as a tool that could help literally save humanity, right? That could preserve liberty in digital form. And we're watching the world transition into this purely digital age, and efforts are being made to corral all of society in a way where they'll be completely controlled once they enter into this digital realm. And we need tools that will be an escape hatch for them. And I see Monero as that tool. And like I said, it's more pertinent than ever with all the story. Every day there's 10 new stories now a day, things that are happening around the world. I was like, might want to use a Monero. You might want to look into Monero.
Maybe you need a Monero.
Right. We're no longer guessing that things might get more dystopian. Like we've already crossed the Rubicon there, right? And now like it's beyond having the initial spark. The train has left the station. And we're trying to build, an island that people can escape to, that can jump off to. So yeah, there's been no lack of things to talk about on Monero Talk, that's for sure. I will say too, like my background, obviously I was always kind of entrepreneurial, working on side projects, but they were side projects because I had to make a living over here in the US. I wasn't able to just I never had that in my life where I was able to just kind of fully dedicate to my entrepreneurial ways. Because I always had family that I need to support and things like that. And it's worked out, no complaints. And now I've managed to get these entrepreneurial things up and running. But my day job, I'm an engineer. I'm actually a civil engineer by trade. Physics was my thing in high school. I was good at physics. Math, I was good at math, but I wasn't like I was no math whiz. I was whatever in the top of the math students, but not like the guys that we deal with. Not those guys. Nowhere near. But for an average high school, right? I was a decent math guy. Physics, I was like like the top physics student in my high school, and like so that's kind of like where my background comes from in terms of being able to perhaps understand these things when these super geniuses are talking to me. And then by trade, I became a patent attorney, and really the real skill in. And I don't practice as a patent attorney. I practice as a civil engineer, but I became one because I went to law school at night, whatever, became a patent attorney. The real skill in being a patent attorney is being able to digest an invention, understand what it is, and boil it down to its essence and figure out what its inventive essence is. And so I think that's kind of, perhaps giving me the skill to sit down and read something like the Bitcoin white paper in the early days and really understand what that inventive aspect is. I think a lot of people didn't really always grasp what it was about. And like I said, that comes down to creating a system that essentially no government can co-opt or control, purely decentralized, and in a form that's unstoppable. That was the invention. That was the intent, and the need for privacy is part of that. That's what makes it unstoppable, and that's what you realize just to get all that stuff in there. And another reason why actually, I kind of like didn't really pursue the patent stuff was as I got more involved in this world too. It kind of opened my eyes to open source and those concepts, and kind of push me away from the ideology of patent law.
Yeah. In one of my earlier episodes, I was talking to Stefan Kinsella, who is a libertarian author and also a patent attorney, and he wrote this fabulous book Against Intellectual Property, which greatly shaped my thinking on the harm that's actually being done with copyrights and patents and all that kind of stuff. But he also, I think, Stefan Kinsella is practicing like defensive patents, so that you have a patent that your competition cannot patent troll you. So, and that kind of thing. So it's not. My position now is patents can be used defensively, which can be consistent with libertarian ideology, and it's not always that you are preventing others from using their property as they see fit.
Right. You're preventing others from letting them get a patent in such a way where they prevent others from using property, right?
Yeah, and in the end,
interesting guy to talk to. What's his name?
Stefan Kinsella. I can connect you after this.
Please do it. I'd love to read that book to maybe he's formalized a lot of the thoughts that I've had. That sounds great.
Yeah, definitely. All right. And you also mentioned you had some failings, and I think this is important thing to draw out, because entrepreneurship is a lot of failing. Basically, it's always failing. Yeah. And Elon Musk, I think, has this great quote. It's fail, but fail fast. Try something, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, have the courage to kind of pivot or change the approach, or maybe even abandon the thing together. What's your take on failing? How do you deal with that? And yeah.
Yeah, I think over the years I've gotten better at failing. And I, number one, not letting it stop you, right? That's the most important thing. And seeing it is ultimately seeing it as a positive, as a moment for learning and realizing you need to pivot. And it's part of the excitement of entrepreneurship, right? Because you're trying to figure out, you're trying to solve that puzzle, trying to figure out what works. You're trying to find that product market fit. I think I've learned those lessons throughout the years, and right now with the XMR Bazaar, I think we're doing a good job of kind of implementing some of those basic lessons of entrepreneurship, of finding product market fit, launching an MVP, not getting too concerned about the tech and whether or not things are perfect, but getting something that's good enough for people to use for the primary purpose that it will be used for early adopters, and then iterating as you get feedback, finding yourselves in positions where essentially users are demanding something be done to fix, right? Like, this sucks. This is shit. You got to change this right now. And that's when you know what to focus on, as opposed to just trying to imagine in your mind what something needs to be, rather listening to the feedback from people as they use it and implementing those things. So I think I've picked up those skills along the way, and now trying to implement that with some of the projects that with all the projects we have going on.
Yeah. I think this is such an important lesson to learn, that the sooner you are on the market and able to get real customers to provide real feedback, this is like the chance where the rubber hits the road and you see if your brain castle actually matches up with reality. And that's also what I've learned in entrepreneurship, is like, you working away in your garage, creating the perfect prototype, this is nothing. Yeah, you didn't sell a single unit, and it's much better to have something that is super bare bones that you can actually show to clients and kind of gauge their demand for it. And I have to admit, we created this tip XMR proposal, and this was also our downfall, kind of, or is our downfall, that we want to have such a great tool in the beginning that we haven't even launched anything yet. And maybe you can talk to this, because now you have created XMR Chat, which is super chats for streamers with Monero. And I've kind of looked at it. It's not in the, like, I don't think it uses this real-time WebSocket connection for showing donations, but and I think that you are kind of like exposing your view keys to the platform. Then the platform is able to check transactions for you and then display them wherever. And the main distinction is XMR Chat exists, where tip XMR is kind of like this fantasy still.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example, right? So you could sit around all day and try to perfect the tech, and perfect maybe elements of it that are ultimately important, but not as important as getting it out to the users where they could use it for the purpose it's built for, right? So you got to put your view key in there. You got to put your view key in there for it to function, for it to track the donations coming in. But I mean, is that tremendous of, if you're being an idealist on some level, yeah, maybe that's not ideal. But for purposes of receiving tips, nobody could see it, right? It got us off the ground, and yeah, we use LWS. I'm not super techie on the specs behind how it's actually functioning. That's another point to make too, right? So I've never been a dev, right? I always kind of wished I was, but wasn't my thing. I tried coding at times in college and whatever, and that was something that never came naturally to me. Languages in general. I mean, even when you hear me talk, like I'm not the most eloquent speaker. I don't speak any language other than English. I wasn't really good at picking up languages. I think mostly because I've always had hearing problems from when I was very young. But I feel like that kind of ties into the coding thing, right? Because languages and coding related. So I was never, the coding thing, I never really picked up on it. I feel like that was a real impediment to me for working on these things, because I had these ideas, which I thought were beautiful ideas all the time. I'd be like, oh, we got to build this, even from the earlier days of the internet when I was young, like, oh, I wish this existed. And I'd always try to get people to come like build things with me, and I'd find them and I'd try to explain exactly what I have, write things out and give them the blueprints, but they would never kind of build what I had in my mind. And I always felt like that was like one of the failings. And if I could just build it myself, it would work. But now through the years, and with the Monero community and these Monero projects, I've managed to find good people that are really good at the building part, and we're aligned and communicating well on the vision of these things. So now it's like working so beautiful. Like, it's so important to have that, obviously, to have that team, right, where you could have people that are implementing what you're thinking about. I forget what the original question was, but yeah, XMR chat. I think it's working great. It's working fantastically for I'm the first user, right? So I use it on the Monerotopia show. I use StreamYard, which, a lot of people use StreamYard. I think I'm a good kind of tester for these things, because I am I am normie in many ways on a technical level, right? So if it works for Doug TUMAN, it could basically work for anyone, right? So when now XMR chat, it's like, hey guys, this has got to work for me for these purposes. And they managed to get it working on StreamYard very seamlessly. The tips, the super chats come in. I could very easily, a click of a button, throw it up on the screen, and it's functioning. And we're having other streamers reach out to us that are interested in using it, and people beyond the Monero community. And that's really, and I'm sure you were thinking about this as well, with what you were building, is that this could be a great tool to help spread Monero, because it really provides real utility, and showcases the power of Monero, right? So why use anything else to accept super chats? Why use some system where you're basically connected to a bank, where they're taking 30% of your fees, where they can see all the transactions, where they can potentially very easily turn you off or censor some of the tips coming in. Something like Monero is the perfect tool for a super chat system, especially those that are perhaps out there talking about controversial things.
Yeah. For me, it was exactly the same way. I think it was 2020, I was also doing YouTube work and doing videos, and I noticed that I couldn't monetize my videos because my channel had less than 1,000 subscribers and I had less than 400 hours of watched content. So YouTube just didn't allow me to monetize, and I thought, this kind of sucks, because it is unfair towards the new creators who don't have the track record yet, but maybe would need some gauge also from the viewers, how valuable is their content. And I thought these live tips are such a great metric to value for value, directly show, okay, this is valuable to me and I'm paying you for it, so you can continue doing this and I can continue consuming. So it's like this classic win-win situation where, unfortunately, nowadays we have usually this middleman, be it YouTube or Twitch or whoever, who is in a position to say, oh, your life's work, your daily income, well, all of that is gone right now, and like you're just deplatformed and away you go. So all your opinions, they go with you. And with Monero, you are uncensorable. And so if you even host your own video stream, like there's nothing anybody can do, and viewers can still seek out your content and reward you for it. And the other point you made that I think is also true for me is like, when you are your own customer, i.e., you are an entrepreneur that is solving a need that you yourself have, like you already know the demand is at least one, because I want this myself. And you are also kind of able to see, okay, which feature is most important to me. It also comes with the danger of trying to do it perfectly before releasing anything to the public, but still like having something that intrinsically motivates you, like you said, especially in the moments where something didn't work out and maybe you are down and want to throw it all away, that you come back to it and say, no, I actually really want this, so let's keep pursuing, is something, at least to me, seems very important to be a successful entrepreneur.
100%, 100%. And to make clear, because you got me, XMR chat does have a long way to go in terms of improving on the technological aspects. When we use StreamYard, for example, we are using Twitch to allow the super chats to work live through StreamYard as essentially a workaround. It works splendidly. It's very smooth, but once again, not ideal for these reasons, right? If we ultimately want it to be, completely censorship resistant and we're not relying on companies that can turn us off, we'll have to figure those things out. We're adding a way to do it through OBS and things like that, so that will make it more unstoppable. But yeah, it definitely has a long way to go. But I do think we did a good job at just shipping it, getting it out, and making it usable for the first user.
Yep. Okay, so you're like this cypherpunk entrepreneur, and I'm super curious because one of the arguments we often hear against cryptocurrency is it's no good doing business with it because it's, for example, so volatile. How has been your experience, like being in this crypto space and maybe earning in crypto? Has this been a lot of pain for you or not at all? What's your experience?
It's been a mind fuck, man. Right? So it just, how it, right? You just have to have, it's at the end of the day, if you have these principles and this philosophy, you come to, you change the framing in your mind to the point where you don't care anymore, right? And you start to see it as just a tool for what it is, right? You ignore the number go up, you ignore the number go down. Now, practically speaking, that has real world implications on your life, right? Especially if you're completely relying upon it. That goes back to the day job, right? So I've managed to keep a day job throughout all of this. I've never taken off from that, and part of the reason is because of these entrepreneurial pursuits. I always wanted a steady thing I can rely on, and my day job is obviously fiat based. I'm not getting paid in crypto on my day job. It's quite reliable. I've been doing it for many years now. So that's kind of my base, right? If this whole crypto thing went away tomorrow, I'm still eating, I still have a home, my family's still surviving. So that gives me the ability now with crypto to just be very pure in how I approach it. So we are all crypto in our businesses, Sunita and I, with everything we run, from Monero Talk to Gratuitous, to XMR Bazaar, to Monero Nodo, to XMR Chat. Everything is all Monero. Monero coming in terms of people that are buying, things from us, our sponsors. Some of them actually pay in fiat for their own whatever reasons. But by and far, most people are paying us in Monero, and we're using Monero as much as we possibly can for paying all our expenses, and it's worked out splendidly. It's a little difficult at times, and sometimes it's much easier, right? So we have consultants all around the world that help us with various tests. Just send them a Monero payment. There's been times where people are like, no, they demand fiat. And in those moments, when you're comparing crypto to fiat for purposes of sending transactions to people around on the other side of the world, and they're asking you to use the traditional banking system, it's like, it's so horrible. It's so hard. You're paying like $40 in fees or something to send $1,000, and you got to wait 3 days. And so yeah, we are as crypto as Monero can be in terms of using it. And we've come to be completely fine with the ups and downs, because the overall trend is up. And we're just all in, right? So it's just kind of a mental thing for me. I'm mentally all in, so it doesn't matter, right? I go down with the ship, or perhaps I jump to. I've always said, right, Monero is just a tool. I just think it's currently the best form of digital cash. Sure, if we started to see something else that was taking over the dark markets and becoming the crypto that people are using for purposes of transacting digitally, yeah, I would jump ship in those terms and move over to the one that's winning. But other than that, yeah, I'm all in on it, and so it's really more of just a psychological thing than anything else.
Yeah, and I really applaud you for voicing it so starkly, because there's many Bitcoin maximalists, for example, that have like abandoned all thinking and adopted a new dogma, which is just Bitcoin fixes the world, and I have to. I don't even have to think further because I know all of these smart people are saying the same thing. So I'm just going to stack my sats and hodl. I'm not going to spend them. I mean, why would I spend money? In a few years, I'll be a millionaire. And yeah, and they're so tribal in the Bitcoin space. And then when I come along and I say, hey, I think we share the same values, that we want freedom and personal sovereignty. And I think Monero also manifests those values. Then they're like, oh no, Monero, shitcoin, and Bitcoin only. There is no second best. And, it's like the NPC mantra. And I think that's so kind of shameful, because it's not about a concrete implementation of technology. Like you said, it's just a tool. Like I use my butter knife to butter my bread. I can use Monero to pay anybody in the world without middlemen. And whether it's Monero or some other name, it doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is that it cannot be stopped. Ideally, nobody knows about it. And like, I can pay a little fee. Like I don't have to pay exorbitant amount of money to send money around the world. And yeah.
Like I've there were times, right, where I was trying to battle the Bitcoin maxis, right? I'd have them on my show, this is like in the earlier days of Monero Talk. I'd have them on my show, and we'd be debating and this and that. And a lot of that too was me like making sure I was on the right path, right? And yeah, they kind of always confirmed that I was. The conversations didn't go too well, but I'd realize these guys are completely full of shit. They're complete hypocrites. So many of them, even ones that I had great respect for when I fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, like Andreas Antonopoulos, for example, right? Like, I don't want to throw too much shade to him because he did so much for really espousing the importance of crypto, right? At an early time when nobody was able to understand it and put it in words, he was the guy doing it. But then, like with Monero, it was like he always just kind of ignored it. But ultimately his reasoning was that he just doesn't have time to look at Monero. He's focused on Bitcoin. And, I respect that. But I've since kind of I don't really. It doesn't really interest me anymore, right? That is what it is. Let the BTC maxis be BTC maxis. There's really nothing left to debate or talk about. They think Bitcoin is fungible on some level. I don't see how you could think that. We have Monero. There's really nothing left to argue about. And now it appears like they just feel, a lot of them just feel threatened by Monero because they see that it's eating Bitcoin's lunch in terms of taking over the use case for peer-to-peer digital cash payments. Like I said, the dark markets, they're all using Monero. They're not using Bitcoin. They're moving, some of them, like, because of the network effect, it takes a while for people to move away from the system. But by and far, for the most part, anybody who knows anything that actually uses this stuff and has a real need for it being digital cash has moved over to Monero. So it's like there's nothing to really even debate with them on that level anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now it's just a question of time that we see in reality who is right, because I mean, we could be wrong. Yeah, Monero could, I don't know, there could be an undetectable inflation bug already that hasn't been found yet. And so I always try to, like also voice my criticisms as well, because I don't know. I have an inkling, but to err is human, and I think it's kind of foolish to say, okay, I know the answer is, for example, that Bitcoin has already won. Yeah, the fight is over, and now all other coins are kind of left in the dust. I think the verdict hasn't been spoken yet. we are talking about a monetary system that potentially can span the entire globe. And of course, this is not going to be implemented in 15 years. We need time for the technology to prove that it's can be running 24/7, 365 days a year. And then people use it and others see, oh, they use it, works for them. So that's also the work that you're doing. It's kind of like this trailblazer, walking through the jungle where no one has been before, and with the machete hacking a path, and then there is a path, and the next one who comes will have it a little bit easier. And as more people kind of wander that road, it can become a highway. And so I think it's very short term to say Bitcoin has already won or anything like this. I think this can take decades, and we are just in the beginning phases of really the crypto wars phase 2, where, in the 90s, they tried to ban asymmetric cryptography in general, and now cryptography is applied to money, and they try to crack down on that. And, that's also the thing, sure, they can outlaw Monero, but if Monero doesn't survive the outlawing, then it's not an interesting technology to me anyway. So I think it's the perfect litmus test. And I just had to think about this Chainalysis video that leaked the other day, where if you haven't seen this, you must watch it. It's such an important piece of information. Yeah, talking also to the audience now, because there's a leaked video of a Chainalysis employee explaining the tool, the block explorer they use for tracing Monero transactions. And the short takeaway is, no, Monero is of course not generally traceable. There are some information that get leaked, especially if you are uncareful how you use it, if you use just any public node and don't run your own node, for example, or if you use a lot of centralized exchanges. But it's like this insight into the crypto wars, the amount of information that they bundle together. And when I was watching that video on Monero, I think, okay, how does that Bitcoin tool look? That Bitcoin tool must be crazy. They must have clear name right to every output and be able to do so much, because all of this added cryptography that Monero has is absent in Bitcoin. So sorry to derail that, but I thought it was such an interesting video.
It's kind of a shame that obviously there's people that are now using it for misinformation. We saw some crypto media outlets put it out there Monero is traceable. Look, this video leak. Anybody in Monero that understands Monero knew all this stuff already, right? We've been talking about it literally for years. That's why Luke is hustling to create full chain membership proofs. That's why we're constantly evolving in Monero. That is obviously, and I'm sure you'd agree, one of the also greatest advantages of the Monero project versus a lot of other projects is this self-realization, this self-pessimism, right? Or skepticism, right? Mm-hmm. The Monero community is very, very self-skeptical, is constantly looking at itself, looking at the tech and saying wait a minute, can we do this better? Can we do this better? So we've always known of these potential ways in which you can probabilistically gain insight into how people are using Monero, and with that knowledge, perhaps make guesses at who a sender may be, right? We've always known the node issue. That's what we say, run your own node, right? If you want to be 100% certain, run your own node. I mean, so I don't think that shouldn't have been an eye opener for any, normal Monero user. Run your, if you're going through a node that's run by chain analysis, and they're waiting for you to send, you send your Monero transaction, and it's connected to their node. Sure, they might be able to determine your IP, right? What's the workaround? Run your own node. Run Tor while you run your own node. To be that Monero is broken because of that is completely absurd. Dandelion ++ exists, right? We have all this tech that already exists that really protects your ability to remain anonymous as a user, even on the network level. And there's constant development too. Like when I had Ruckningham on, he was already talking about, some of the improvements that are going to come beyond Dandelion plus plus to make Monero even more obfuscated on the network level. So it really shouldn't have been an eye opener to anybody that's already a Monero user. Justin Ernhofer did a great video on some of the attacks that could be made on Monero given its ring signatures, and this was many years ago. I remember when I had him on, even in the early, in 20, when I first started Monero Talk. It was one of our first episodes. We talk about the weaknesses of ring signatures and what some of the potential attacks are. Oh, there's an EAE attack, an eValis attack, right? If you have adversaries that really want to try to figure out where, who is sending a transaction, there are ways in which they might be able to gain information on you if they're getting information from all the exchanges that accept Monero, right? All the centralized exchanges, if they're able to query all their databases, and if they're able to send you a bunch of transactions to your address, they might be able to gain some insight into who the sender is, given how ring signatures currently work. And we know that's going away with full chain membership proofs, right? So it's like it's kind of sad to see it being used against Monero, but we expect nothing less. And ultimately, it's probably going to have benefits, because I think Monero's maybe bigger problem is getting the word out on it to the broader crypto community, to the super normies, which makes up the vast majority of crypto, people that have never even heard of Monero yet. Can you imagine being in crypto and not knowing Monero? Like I meet people, I go to some of these conferences, like these normie crypto conferences, and they're like, "Oh, what's that? Is that like what blockchain is that on?" Like,
Solana?
If you don't know Monero, you just should not be like, I don't know, like what funnel they came in to get into crypto where they've managed to not even come across Monero. It's like you've failed. You failed the crypto IQ test 100%. You don't even know the purpose of crypto, because if you know the purpose of crypto, what its value proposition is supposed to be, you would at least have heard of Monero, because you'd at least be looking at it as a potential that's fulfilling that value proposition better than any other, right? You don't have to ultimately pick it. Maybe you ultimately say whatever, it's Bitcoin or Zcash, but you would at least become aware of it. So if nothing more, maybe these attack articles at least open people's eyes. They hear the name for the first time. The normies hear the word Monero, unfortunately under bad circumstances, and they'll think, oh, it's traceable. But who knows? Maybe that gets them to start looking a little bit harder.
Yeah. Awesome. For the last part of this conversation, I want to pivot to another topic that I think you are super knowledgeable in, which is onboarding newbies. I think, I think you talked about this, that when you're in a taxi, you usually talk with the cab driver about Monero. And I'm just interested, because for me, I'm super introverted and I avoid social interaction if I can help it. So what's been your experience with these kind of interactions? Do the people stick with Monero? Do you think they just are interested while you're talking to them, but don't really use it afterwards? Yeah.
That I don't know, right? Because I'm not really following up with a lot of these people. So I don't know. I do think it sends them down the rabbit hole. But yeah, when I see a moment, an opportunity, I try to get people to accept Monero. I usually do it in the form of tips, because that's kind of an easy ask, right? Who doesn't want additional money to the money they're already getting, right? So not so much saying, hey, instead of accepting credit card accept Monero for payment. I instead of starting with that, because that's a big hurdle to overcome. You pay with your credit card because that's what they want you to do. But then after, like, hey, would you like a tip in cryptocurrency? I usually start with Bitcoin, right? Because everybody now knows the word, like, oh, you know what Bitcoin is? Now pretty much rarely do you come across somebody now in this day and age who doesn't know, right? So everybody's like, yeah, I've heard of Bitcoin. Like, okay, I'm gonna send you some crypto, but it's not Bitcoin. It's like Bitcoin. It's very similar to Bitcoin. The only difference is it's completely untraceable. It's digital cash. I'm like, it's like physical cash, but it's in digital form. So nobody knows I'm even sending it to you right now. Would you want some? And like, 9 times out of 10, people say yes. They're always kind of like, well, what do I got to do? I don't have a crypto wallet. And now it's like we're at this point where it's so easy, right? Everybody has a smartphone. They know how to download apps. Like, oh, just go download Cake Wallet, and within a minute, I have sent somebody essentially their first Monero transaction, and often their first true crypto transaction where they're getting it peer to peer, and they're holding that crypto, and that's explained to them, and I explain to them how they have to write down their seed, and that's it. And it's just kind of you see the light bulb go off in their head a little bit, especially when I'm like, okay, you see how I sent that to you? Guess how much that cost me to send you that transaction? I guess I'm like, no, it cost me 1/3 of a cent. And like I said, and like once again, nobody saw that transaction. It didn't go through any corporate. This isn't Venmo. There's no servers that it went through. No company even knows we sent it, let alone any government. And that's where they're like, ah. So it's just like cash. And by the way, cash, as I'm sure you know, is going away, right? Like every Joe Schmo can see that happening. And I'm like, and I'm sure you like cash for certain reasons, right? Like ideally you would want to get paid in cash instead of credit card. And usually 9 times out of 10, people are like, yes, I would. So that's usually the way I go about it, and I think I'm effective because I believe in these things so much, right? That I'm able to express them with passion, and people see that I'm being genuine when I'm talking to them, and I feel good about it, right? Because I'm not there trying to pump my bags, right? I'm not there trying to sell them a used car. I'm there trying to get them to use a tool that I truly think will improve their lives if they start to use it. So for me, I feel like it's coming from a good place. So that adds to my motivation. Like I don't feel like I'm steering any of these people down the wrong path. I feel like I perhaps saved another person.
Yeah. And I think it also, people can tell, when you have an insurance salesman who wants to sell you that one insurance because it's really better for their like commission at the end of the month, it's not so trustworthy. Whereas if you have that shine in your eyes, and people can tell if you're authentic or if you just want to sell them something. So I think that's great. And you also created gatherings, right? You have Monerotopia, which is a meet space come together in Mexico City, and you had it last year as well, right?
Yeah, we have the first one in Miami alongside the Bitcoin conference. This will be our third. Second one was in Mexico City last year, and now the third one will be Mexico City. It was basically after 2020, we hadn't had a MoneroCon in a while, and we weren't sure when the next MoneroCon would be. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to throw a conference. So I threw the first one down in Miami. We were already doing the Monerotopia show, right? So I have Monero Talk, which I basically interview one person a week, but then we have the Monerotopia show, which is a live show that we do every Saturday at 11 a.m. It's very community based. It's super open and accessible. Anybody can jump on stage and participate and talk about the Monero project they're working on, or noobs come up and be like, hey, we have people coming in from all over the world that have just discovered Monero or working on it. And so from that, yes, I was like, how do we now create a meet space version of this? And that was the birth of Monerotopia. And so Monerotopia is obviously it's focused on Monero tech, but from day one, it's also been very open to other tech, right? Because we want to be true in our pursuit of the best form of digital cash. If we're there only talking about Monero, then we're not being true to that pursuit. So let's talk about the other competing technologies. So always been very open to that. And that was, to be honest, I think a little political in the beginning, and it took a little cajoling with the community to get everybody to be open to that being pumped at a Monero conference, right? But the way I've kind of balanced that is we've created privacy tech sponsors, right? So if some competing tech wants to come, we just ask that they basically chip into the conference and help make it possible. So the end result is we have this big, beautiful conference. It's very open and accessible. So, if there are people in other cryptos, they don't feel like an outsider. They feel welcome to come and to come learn. And ultimately, my thinking is, like I said, all roads lead to Monero. So when they're there as a, a Zcasher or a Pirate Chain user or whatever their privacy crypto is of choice. They're learning and hearing about Monero and being like, wait a minute, yeah, I'd be an idiot to ignore the one that's kind of winning the space. So yeah, first and foremost, it's about Monero, then it's about other privacy tech, and then I'd say the third kind of pillar of the conference is growing adoption. So building out a Monero circular economy is the third focus. And we do that in two ways. One, through like the talking about how do we, having speakers come on and talk about it, talking about the different apps and products that are helping for that cause. And then additionally, we actually physically are all using Monero there throughout the conference. We have a marketplace built into the conference, so you can come and live off of Monero for the 3-4 days that you're there.
Yeah. I think this is so amazing. Of course, we consume a lot of content through the internet, but for me, my kind of more deep dive journey into anarchism as well was kicked off by a conference called Anarchapulco in Acapulco, Mexico. And just being there in a location with like-minded individuals is really electrifying. And I also had the same feeling at the MoneroCon happenings. It's really, it cannot be quantified how it feels to be there, have so many other people around you that share your values, that already know the context. Usually when you meet a stranger and you start talking about Monero, you have to start the minimum. And in these places, you are already up here and you can discuss details and nuances. And I think it's really, really great. And if you have never been to such a conference, Monerotopia is happening at the beginning of November, and Douglas was kind enough to also create a promo code for me. So if you go to monerotopia.com, right, and use Alex24 for buying some tickets, this is greatly showing love from my side. And I unfortunately, I won't be able to make it this year myself, but no,
I wanted to get you down there, man. Are you sure we could? I could even throw you some money, man, to help get you down there if that's that's part of the problem.
No,
offline about that. I know I was pushing you, but I think you got other things going on right now, right?
Yeah. For me, it's not a money issue; it's more a time issue. But it's definitely on my bucket list, and I will move heaven and earth to be there 2025 when it comes around. And so.
I just want to say too, like, it's all about getting people there and among each other for all those reasons you're talking about. We've seen some amazing collaborations come out of this. Luke Parker was there at the first one in Miami, and that's when ThorChain was presenting, and we were trying to get Monero on ThorChain, and ultimately they balked at that for those who remember that, and that would have been a great like decentralized on and off ramp for Monero. And they didn't want to add it for whatever reason, right? So and now we know that Luke is working on Sarai decks. So a lot of that, that was kind of the impetus of that came out of conversations that were taking place at Monerotopia, and seeing that ThorChain wasn't going to move forward, and Luke's like, I'm going to go build my own. I'm going to go build my own version. So a lot of beautiful things come out of these conferences that when you get people in a room, like you said, that are all passionate about these things, collaborations start to take place, and you walk away like like the tank is now full, right? You walk away with a full tank of Monero Liberty energy, right? Because you know that you're not alone, right? You
Yes.
have this group of people that agree with you, that are all on the same track, and then everybody goes off back to their homes to continue working remotely on the mission. So it's a great way to kind of re-energize as well.
Yeah. Douglas, this has been an amazing hour. Thank you so much for joining me and answering all my questions. For the listener or viewer, I will post all of the links how you can find Douglas, Monero Talk, Monerotopia, XMR Bazaar, XMR Chat, and all of the other amazing projects that Douglas is involved with in the show notes. And yeah, thank you again for joining me, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, man. Can I bring up one other thing?
Yeah. Go for it.
Copa Monero, right? I just want to say Copa Monero because we need to give this love, because Alessandro is doing an amazing job. This is another project that I helped kickstart. I'm highly involved in. We're basically funding with the Monerotopia conference. And it's a soccer tournament that's taking place in Ibarrete, which is a very small town in the Formosa province of Argentina, which we're labeling Monero Town. I'm sure most of your listeners have come across Monero Town at this point.
The Lemmy instance, right?
They started organically using Monero in Formosa.
So not the Lemmy instance, but an actual place in Argentina.
Yeah. You're not aware of this?
No.
Yeah, we got to get the information out there. Oh my God, because we even played Copa Monero games at
MoneroCon. Yeah.
Live. Yeah. So in this small town in Ibarrete, people have started organically using Monero. It basically started with these group of young guys that started using it actually for gambling on soccer, because they didn't have a means of whatever, they got cut off from the traditional site that they were using to do it. It led to them using Monero. Then they had this Monero and they were trying to figure out how to use it. So they started essentially trading it among each other. If somebody needed pesos, they'd give them pesos. Somebody needed more Monero to go gamble, they'd give them Monero. And then they started getting their local stores to accept the Monero, because a lot of the local stores were also in on this circle of people that were using it for purposes of gambling on soccer. So like a little organic growth took place. And I went and I visited the town, and sure enough, not everybody in town, but a lot of people in town are excited. Like I got my haircut with paid for a Monero. We ordered a pizza for Monero. We went to the local corner store and they accepted Monero. And so out of that grew the Copa Monero championship, where we have 12 local teams to that area competing to win a Monero prize. And through that, thousands of people are learning about Monero. And so I just say, give it some support. Go to copamonero.com, check it out. The finals will be happening during the Monerotopia conference, and we'll air the finals at Monerotopia. So I just want to get that out there as well.
All right. Amazing. I could talk to you for hours more, but I know you got to run, so I'll let you go. And thank you again.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate this. This is awesome. Thank you.
I want Monero, I don't want no cash. I want Monero, I don't want no dash. I don't want no Bitcoin, cause when they track it, it feel like trash.